Knights, a character that is unlike many in the world of video games. From their jester-like appearance to their goofy personality, Nights into Dreams saw its game debut on July 5th, 1996 for the Sega Saturn. However, it was conceptualized as far back as in 1992 during the development of Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Work on it did not begin, however, until late 1994, after the release of Sonic and Knuckles. Yuji Naka was the lead programmer and producer, while Naoto Oshima and Takashi Iizuka were director and lead designer respectively. Oshima created Knights based on his travels in Europe, while mixing in American and Japanese elements to appease all types of fans. Knights is also genderless in the game because it takes place in the subconscious of both female and male characters. Their personality is set to be a reflection of that of the children's, i.e., silly and goofy as children should be. The levels and concept of the game were based on Cirque du Soleil, or Circus of the Sun, as well as dream sequences, REM sleep, etc., including the works of Carl Jung, Sigmund Freud, and Friedrich Holtz, renowned psychologists and psychoanalysts. Yuji Naka has stated that Knights was based on Carl Jung's shadow theory, the idea that we repress certain parts of ourselves in a blind spot of our minds, while Elliot Edwards and Clarice Sinclair were based on Carl Jung's animus and anima, the idea that men have an unconsciously repressed feminine side and women have an unconsciously repressed masculine side. Yuji Naka had originally wanted Knights to be a more slow-paced game that you gradually spread up as the level progressed. Yeah, this guy definitely worked on Sonic alright. It took 2 years to get the final story and character designs because in development they switched from 2D sprites to 3D models, something Iizuka has stated was the hardest part of development because of the contradiction between 2D and 3D, 2D game controls and a 3D art style. They even released this game with an analog controller to make it easier to control the game. There were many problems during development, including rebuilding Spring Valley from scratch numerous times. The other problem was that the team had no reference for a game like this, so for many, they were working off of nothing. The game was apparently programmed with 2D flying mechanics, because the game was too hard in pure 3D. Hey, we got Kirby in 3D eventually. Maybe we'll see a 3D Knights game one day too. But what about the game? Well, let's start with the story. Elliot Edwards and Clarice Sinclair are 14 years old? They look small for 14 years old. Anyway, they are kids who have experienced trauma. Elliot being bullied on the basketball court and losing a game of basketball to bullies, and Clarice having stage fright. Because of this, in their dreams they are tortured by the Nightmare, dark creatures of the dream world created by Wise Man. Spelled with a Z because why not? Together with Knights, Elliot and Clarice team up to defeat Wise Man, who wants to destroy both the dream world of NiGHTopia and the real world, as they overcome their trauma and grow as people. And then there's a plot about Christmas where Clarice and Elliot go to NiGHTopia to get a star back on a tree. Magic of Christmas, everybody! While the story is by no means deep, you can learn a lot of these characters and their lives by their levels and bosses, deepening the lore. But enough about the story. What about the gameplay? In both stories, you control Knights in a 2D on-rails flyer. The goal of every level is to use your acrobatic flying to score as many points as possible across 4 acts or laps. First by collecting 20 lums, as I call them, by encircling them with a move called paralooping, drill dashing into them, or as it was originally called, the spin dash, or just running into them and then breaking the capture device holding an Idea. Pronounce id-e-a and spell I-D-E-Y-A because why not? After you get an Idea, you enter bonus time, which is necessary in order to get a good score in any level. You can also go around the level track as many times as you want, as long as you return to the starting area before the clock runs out. Doing so resets the timer to 120 seconds and starts the next act. Hitting enemies decreases the amount of time you have by 5 seconds. If the clock runs out, you lose all the lums you collected, your score drops to 0, and you have to walk back to the start. That is not all. There is a giant egg clock that is chasing you, and if it catches you, it's game over. There are 8 levels in the game. Well, technically 7, but you play the last act twice, once for each kid. While the opening level for Clarice and Elliot, Spring Valley, and Splash Garden are, respectively, they are good levels. Splash Garden is more like brushing up on your skills as opposed to an opening level. Think going from Angel Island to Mushroom Valley. Both are opening stages, but one is slightly harder than the other. I believe the level order for this game was supposed to be that you play Clarice's levels first, and then play Elliot's. This becomes increasingly obvious with the following levels: Mystic Forest and Soft Museum for Clarice, with Frozen Bell and Stick Canyon for Elliot. Mystic Forest is a fun level that doesn't ask too much from the player until the final lap, which has a top-down perspective maze. The boss, however, Gulpo, is confusing, with trying to figure out how to beat him, and that you need to use the fish to catapult yourself through his tank to damage him. Took a few tries to beat this thing when I first played it. Soft Museum is a good penultimate level for Clarice, with challenging level design and the gimmick of knights getting fat when they touch the architecture and jumping into cannons for short, slight gameplay changes. The level will drain your drill dash a lot though, so be careful. The boss for this level, Jackal, which sounds like it should be a dog boss, but it's not. It's another clown, and you fight him in a funhouse. God dang it! Jackal will shoot cards at you, which will drain your timer by 5 seconds for each. You need to get up and close to him and drill dash into him 3 times. He won't attack you if he doesn't have his cape, which gets knocked off after you attack him. With Elliot, Frozen Bell is a fun acrobatic level that puts to work your reflexes. However, unlike Clarice's levels being a steady increase in difficulty, going from Splash Garden to Frozen Bell is like going from Angel Island to Flying Battery. The difficulty increase feels more steep than usual, but it's still a fun level. In the final lap, Knight's shape shifts into a sled, which you control for a few seconds. The boss of Frozen Bell is Claws, which I'm going to tell you now is the most confusing boss in the game on your first run. You have to wait for Claws to jump on a mouse rocket, which he will then ignite. You then fly over to that rocket and dash into it. You repeat this until he has nowhere left to jump. This is, in my opinion, the worst level in the game. Which one level has to be the worst by principle, but this is a bad level. Stick Canyon is the hardest, not why it's the worst, level in the game. For stuff that's fine with the level, the magnetism gimmick is okay. It's annoying, but it does not intrude on gameplay too much. Even the part where the items get attracted to you is just okay, not terrible. Now for the bad stuff. Without talking about the gameplay, the level is bland. And not in the Dark Machine final level bland, but menacing. Just bland. The brown and gray don't help either. Finally, the worst part about this level, the automated sections. Think back to when I talked about the other levels, automated, you can only go forward sections. They were short and concise. This level has 2 sections like this. One problem, they go on for too long. And yes, while they are skippable if you know where to fly, you are not going to know that the first time you play the game. And only the first one is skippable. The second one is mandatory. This means that if you want to get a good score and still finish within the time limit, you have to do the whole level and get a good score plus bonus time in 1 lap. However, this level has one saving grace, as it has the single most iconic and best boss from this game, Rayala. Before there was Edgy the Hedgy, there was the Black Clown. He speaks in some kind of dream language, which is supposed to translate to something like, "There will be no more knights," or "Bring it on, knights." I prefer the former, but I digress. In this fight, you have to paraloop Rayala 3 times. Which sounds easy, but is actually really difficult, as Rayala is trying to do the same thing to you. A very kinetic fight, which I think kinda redeems the level he's attached to. It's like having to eat your gross vegetables before getting your ice cream sandwich for dessert. The final level for both characters is Twin Seeds. In these levels, Knight stays trapped in the center of the bell tower. Without knights to help you fly, you can only jump to your death, and hope it ends quickly. Psych! You can now fly without knights! Unlike the previous levels, you are encouraged to beat these acts in only 1 lap. This is because, unlike the previous stages, the timer doesn't reset after completing the lap, which means you only have 2 minutes to finish the level or it's game over. a very challenging but fair level to finish the game. Until you fight the worst boss in said game. To reach this boss, you need to get at least a C rank in every prior level. Doing so will let you fight the final boss, Wise Man, spelt with a Z because why not? Your final challenge to overcome your fears, as both Clarice and Elliot transform Kamen Rider style into knights. And it's a boss you hit 4 times, avoiding very easy projectiles to win the game. Kinda disappointing considering 2 very challenging bosses came before this guy, and he goes down in 4 easy hits. All in all, Nights into Dreams is a fun game. You can buy it on the Steam store for $15, which will allow you to play in HD or the original Sega Saturn graphics. I really recommend this game as one of the few good games that the Sega Saturn had. Thank you for watching, and have a fantastic night. God, I talked about Sonic a lot in this.